All right, so we're still looking at errors and correction of errors. We're going to be looking at the error of original entry, okay, where an incorrect figure has been posted to the account. All right, this is where you're going to hear about undercast entries or overcast entries. All right, just means an incorrect figure has been put into the accounts. This error does not need the suspense account, right? And how we fix this error, right? We're going to get the difference between the correct amount, right? Difference between the correct amount and the wrong amount, right? And then we're going to enter it into both accounts, all right? So we're going to have two situations. The first situation is where entries are undercast, all right? So whenever entries are undercast, we're going to need to increase the respective entries. So in this case, what will happen is after you get the difference between the correct amount and the wrong amount, with the undercast entry, you're going to post it to the account so that it can increase the entries so that we have the correct figure, right? Does it affect the trial balance? No, it does not. So let's look at undercast entries. Okay. So we have our first one here. A payment of bills 15,000 was recorded as 5,000. All right. So here we've paid for an expense, right? Instead of it being recorded as 15,000, which is the correct amount, it was recorded as 5,000. All right. So how do we fix this error? All right. We're going to get the difference between the correct amount and the wrong amount. So you're going to say 15,000 minus 5, you get 10,000. All right. You're going to get 10,000. You're going to get 10,000. All right. So since the entry was undercast, we need to add 10,000 to both accounts so that we can get the correct figure. As we said, we paid for a bill, all right? So the general entry for whenever you pay a bill, all right? Since here we're going to assume we used cash because it doesn't tell us that we paid by check. So the general entry is we debit the bills payable, right? Or just the bills account. Because they haven't been specific, it was a water bill or an electricity bill, but it's a bill and it's an expense, and expenses are debited. And we're going to credit the cash account because the cash is an asset. Okay, a decrease in an asset, you're going to credit. All right. So originally, this entry, the error was that we put 5,000 here, we debited the bills 5,000, and we credited cash 5,000, right? So this entry was undercast, right? So what we're going to do, right? We open the T accounts, bills here, and cash here. Right, so bills debited 5,000 and cash credited 5,000. So these are the undercast entries. So now, since we've got the difference of 10,000, we're going to need to add 10,000 to both accounts so that we can have the correct figure, which is 15,000, right? So again, you're going to debit the bills 10,000. Okay, you debit the bills 10,000 and you also credit cash 10,000. Right? So that 5 plus 10, that gives us 15,000. Right? So we have corrected the error. Right? These bills were, this journal entry was undercast. Right? A payment of bills 15,000 was recorded as 5,000. So that's how we fixed the error. All right. So here's this journal entry, right? And then once we credit cash 10,000 and bills 10,000, our error has been fixed. All right. Any questions before I move further?
Mr. Mala, good evening.
Good evening.
Is it okay if you can just go through for some of us that joined in late?
Okay. So here we're looking at errors of original entry. All right. This is where wrong amounts are put into the accounts. All right. So you can either have undercast amounts where you put a lower amount than the original amount, or you can have an overcast amount where you've put a higher amount than the original amount. So here, this example specifically, the entry was undercast, all right? We made a payment for bills, which is an expense. It was supposed to be 15,000, but it was recorded as 5,000. Okay. So it was undercast. So what you're supposed to do, you get the difference between the correct amount and the wrong amount. You get the difference, which is 10,000. So we know that the entry was undercast by 10,000. So to correct this error, we're going to need to increase the bills account and the cash account, all right? So that we can have the correct amount in both accounts, which is 15,000. So that's what we did. Right? Whenever entries are undercast, you need to increase those entries.
Uh, Good evening, Mr. Mala.
Good evening. Yes.
Hello, sir?
Yes, I can get.
Yes. In the situation it's undercut, what about the situation where we have, if I can call it overcast, whereby
Oh, we're going to look
you
at
have
that.
recorded the,
We'll look at that one too.
for instance, you are supposed to record the 1,100 and then you have recorded the one. Okay.
You've recorded 1,100,000 where the entry is overcast.
Okay.
Yes, we're going. That's the next example. All right, that's the next example. Because you might have two
Yes,
scenarios.
sir.
Yes, you might have where it's undercast or where it's overcast. So what you just have to remember, when it's undercast, you need to increase the entries. Okay, you need to increase the entries. So that's what we did here. We increased these wrong entries by 10,000 so that we get 15,000 in both accounts. Now let's look at when an entry is overcast, right? In this case, we need to decrease these entries, okay? We need to decrease these entries. So let me just give an example here, right? A payment 8,000 for,
Mr. Mala.
yes,
I think I'm still lagging. I don't know if it's because I've just joined in, others have the basics. I'm trying to apply this situation in real life. Like, how do we apply it
As an
in real life?
accountant, right, so, or as a bookkeeper, there might be errors, right? Errors occur every time in real life. So you as an accountant, you have to know how to correct these errors. Okay. Maybe someone has recorded something wrong. You have to know how to correct those errors as an accountant. So that's the topic, error correction. All right. Whenever there are errors, we're seeing how we correct them. Okay. How we correct errors. So to understand this, you have to have a good foundation in journal entries. Okay. You have to have a good foundation in journal entries. Because these errors, that's how we're going to correct them through journal entries. Okay. These are some of the errors which we correct through journal entries.
Sorry.
All right. So this one here, a payment for electricity, 8,000 was recorded as 18,000. All right. So here the entry has been overcast. It's supposed to be 8,000, but it's recorded as 18,000. Right. So first thing that you're going to do, all right, we have to also visualize this with tier accounts. Let me just erase this. All right, so there we have paid for a bill, which is electricity. All right, so the journal entry is supposed to be you debit the expense, which is the electricity expense, we debit it. And you have to credit cash. Cash is an asset, a reduction in an asset. As you can see here, reduction in an asset, you credit. All right, so you debit electricity and we credit cash, right? So here the entries have been overcast, all right? Instead of putting 8,000, they've put 18,000. So we say here we debit electricity 18,000 and we credit cash 18,000, all right? So on the tier accounts, it will be like this. We have electricity and we have cash. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, we get the difference between the correct amount and the wrong amount, right? The correct amount was supposed to be 8,000, not 18,000. So we're going to say 18,000 minus 8,000, we get 10,000, all right? So the entry has been overcast by 10,000. So we need to reduce this 18,000 in our tier accounts to 10,000. So what we're going to do is on electricity, we'll credit electricity 10,000. On cash, we're going to debit it 10,000. All right. So that 18,000 minus 10,000, you remain with 8,000. All right. You remain with 8,000. Okay. So your error has been corrected. All right. So for Overcast Payments, all right, you need to decrease them. And how you decrease it? You put the amount which it needs to be decreased by on the opposite side. All right. So for electricity, it was overcast by 18,000. It had to be 8,000. That's why we credited it 10,000. So that we can get rid of this 18,000 and remain with the correct amount. All right. So as cash was debited 10,000. Right. So as to reduce this overcast amount here back to 8,000. All right. So how we fixed it? All right. We debited cash 10,000 and we credited electricity 10,000 so that, oh, I don't have the two accounts here. Yes, so that the error is corrected. Yes. Any questions? Let me just put a nice T account here. All right. So we debited cash we debit 10,000 and electricity we credited 10,000. So here credit 10,000 and cash was debited 10,000.